In today's video, we're going to be discussing the wrist angles in your golf swing and how they influence the club face position for a little bit more control over where that ball starts. Make sure you check out this video. Jon Watts here from the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me in the indoor studio, and today's video is all going to be about wrist angles. And I'm going to be talking about the trail wrist and how we can actually set that waiter position at the top and keep that angle on the downswing to improve your club face position. If we can get more control over that club face in our backswing and our downswing, we're going to have better control over the ball flight, where the ball starts. And that's the biggest issue. I think the problem most golfers have is, or the most common fault is an open club face. So the face gets open, they're going to leak that ball right to target for a right-handed golfer unless they use a lot of hands through impact. That tends to cause their body to stall, a lot of hands through impact, and they might have some consistency from there, but they're always really going to struggle, especially under pressure, and of course we're not utilising our body as well as we could. If this sounds like you, this video is really going to help. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, share with as many golfers as you can, and please do consider subscribing as well. So wrist angles are vital to change and affect the club face position in our golf swing. What I'd like to see at the top of the swing is a pretty flat, neutral lead wrist. So my lead hand is just my hand that's closest to the target. And by a flat lead wrist, we're talking about it matching up with my forearm here. If the wrist is going this way, we would say the wrist is an extension, often called cupped. If we were going this way, we'd call it in a bowed position, the official term there, more in flexion. So I'd like that left wrist to be flat. I quite like to even see some players with this little bow in there, but there are good players this way. But what the good players do who get this cupped wrist, this wrist in extension, is they change wrist position on the downswing. So if you can get it right on the downswing, the backswing perhaps doesn't matter so much. If you're struggling on the downswing, the backswing is the first place to look, if that makes sense. Now, a lot has been talked about of what the lead wrist is doing. What I'm going to give you is perhaps a simpler thought of what the trail wrist is doing, because they have to work hand in hand. You know, if I move my trail wrist further back, so my fingertips are further back behind my forearm, I'd have to get a very different lead wrist angle for them to join, because they're both holding on to the golf club. So rather than us focusing on the lead wrist today, I'm going to actually focus on the trail wrist and how that could help you. And what I want you to get the sensation of, if you're someone who's been struggling with an open face, and let me first talk about what an open face would look like. So if you got it on video, what you would see at the top of the backswing is the toe of the golf club hanging more down, okay? If it was neutral, we would see that the leading edge of the golf club would match my lead arm at the top of the golf swing. So we'd expect to see the match in terms of the club face position and my lead arm position. If the club face was closed, so more likely for me as a right-hander to hit the ball more to the left, we'd expect to see the face pointing more up towards the sky. So a pretty neutral wrist position at the top would be it matching my lead arm, my left arm. So top of the backswing from there. Now for me to get a flat lead wrist, what has my trail wrist had to do? It's had to bend backwards a little bit this way, so my fingertips are further behind my forearm. And that's what I want you to get in terms of this drill. I want you to stand around 2 foot from the wall, and I don't want you to have a golf club to start with. What I want you to try and do is wind up, and I want you to try and get your fingertips of your trail hand to touch the wall behind you, okay? So if you got that position there, and now I just put my lead hand onto it, you can see that I'm creating this very flat lead wrist position. So if you're someone who's been struggling with more of a cupped position, the toe of the club hangs down, you've got the face open, and you're struggling with leaking the ball out to the right of the target for a right-hander, left for a left-hander, high, weak shots that way, or you notice that to recover you're having to use a lot of hand action, I would start by looking at the wrist angle and how that's going to affect the club. So 2 foot away from the wall, try and get the fingertips of your trail hand to touch the wall behind you. I was just a little bit too far away. And what I want you to then try and do is keep your fingertips on the wall. In that first couple of feet, you can see my hands have only traced downwards by about, 6, 12 inches, something along these lines. But they're keeping behind me, and that's the sensation I want you to try and get, is I want you to try and feel like your fingertips are further behind your wrist at the top of the golf swing, and I want you to feel like they stay behind you this way. And you can see that does a lot of things. That keeps that bend in my trail elbow here. My trail elbow feels like it's pointing down in front of me. If I get the wrong wrist angle, so lead wrist going this way, my trail wrist will feel like it's more on top. You can see what that starts to do with my trail elbow. So it may be even you've been struggling what the elbow's doing, but actually changing the wrist position can affect what your elbow is doing as well. So you're going to get that sensation, the fingertips staying further behind you. You can see that gives me a very different approach position here with my trail arm that we're really looking for. So I want you to focus on fingers behind, fingers staying behind the wrist. And you can see as I come down into the delivery position, my club face there pretty much matches my spine angle. So all I've got to do is keep rotating and I can square that face. If I have that club face open, so looking like it's pointing more up towards the sky, as I turn into impact, that face is going to be pointing way out right to target, unless I give it a big heave-ho with my hands and arms through impact. So the sensation I'm going to get here, and it may be you've been struggling with club face position, it may be that you've been struggling with the elbow position, but I'm going to focus on my trail hand and feeling like my fingertips are on that wall behind me and staying on that wall behind me, just in that first foot or so of the downswing. And you can see that gives me a very different club face position into impact. So I'm just going to do a slow one, stopping here, and turn. And I would start by doing a lot of those swings just with no real speed, just feeling what it's like. If you've been someone where you've been having to use a lot of hands to recover, you'll get the club in a good position here, and then you'll still use a lot of hands and arms, and that ball for right-hander will go a long way left to target. But what it will teach you to do, from having that club face in a slightly stronger position, more matching my spine angle, it will teach you to rotate your body. Because if I don't, that ball's going to go left for me as a right-handed player. So club face in a stronger position, my fingers are further behind. To stop that ball going left, I've got to turn my body, and that's a great powerful feel for me. So it's not flicking with the hands, it's a rotation. Now, I'm not suggesting there is no hands in the golf swing before anyone jumps in here and accuses me of that, because of course there is. But what we see with the world's best generally is less of this through impact. So there is less club face closure. The toe of the club is still passing the heel, but it's not doing it quickly, excessively down the bottom end with a lot of hand action. We can generate some power from there, but it's very hard to control the club face. So absolutely there is club face closer, absolutely there is what the wrists are doing in the downswing and the hands are doing, but I want the engine, the body, to really control this. So having done some of those swings, fingertips behind, I'm just going to go ahead and hit one having that same feel. Felt very solid, leaked it a little bit right to target. So I'd want to look back at that on camera, see what that club face was looking like. Do I need to feel it a little bit more? As I said, it felt pretty solid. Okay, so it didn't actually pick up, annoyingly, to have a little look at it, it didn't pick up the club face position. I got the path 5 degrees into out. The ball started pretty much on target, so 0.3 right, but bent further right. So I know the face was more open than the path. So I know the face was more open than 5 degrees. So I'd have to work on that club face position a little bit more. So same feel with what my trail wrist is doing. Fingertips behind my forearm at the top, and in the downswing, let's try and get that into a stronger delivery position. So that one, just a nice little soft draw, which would indicate that I had my club face closed compared to my path. So I tend to swing in to out by a few degrees. I know that club face was less open than my path was to the right. So it would tell me, and I'd learn to look at it on video, but it would tell me that my wrist angle there had improved that club face position. I wasn't leaking the ball out right to target. Really focus on what that wrist angle's doing that simple wall exercise. I know it's going to improve your club face control and get to the stage where you can feel like you can turn hard with the body, but it's also going to have some effects on what that elbow is doing. So if you've been struggling with your trail arm, this could also be a move for you. If this video has helped, as mentioned there at the start, hit the thumbs up, share it with as many golfers as you can, and please do consider subscribing.